I woke up one morning and for a second I thought I was still dreaming, because my pasture, the land my father left me, looked like it had been swallowed whole by a carnival. 500 tents and RVs, grills smoking, bonfires crackling, speakers blasting music. And there she was, HOA Karen herself, standing on a folding table in a wide-brimmed hat, waving a megaphone like she was queen of the county. "Welcome to the Freedom Campout!" she screamed, and people cheered like it was the 4th of July. I nearly dropped my coffee. That wasn't a dream. That was my land, my grazing pasture, turned into a festival ground overnight. And I hadn't given anyone permission. Now, you have to understand something. This wasn't just some neighborhood block party gone too far. This was the HOA next door, led by Karen, who had been after me from the moment she moved in. She hated that my weather, worn fences, and grazing bulls messed up the perfect vinyl, sided postcard image she wanted for her subdivision. She sent letters about my unauthorized vegetation. She complained to the county about livestock noise. She even once told me my bulls were dangerous wild animals. And the more I ignored her, the more brazen she got. When they paved their so-called community trail right up against my fence line and bragged about the green belt views, I knew where this was headed. They called it a green belt. I called it my property. I'd confronted her before, map in hand, deed in hand, pointing at the fence posts my grandfather set in the ground decades before she ever bought her plastic palace. And she looked me dead in the eye, smiled that tight HOA smile and said, "The community deserves to enjoy the land. You're just being selfish." Selfish. That was her favorite word. I walked away that day knowing it was only a matter of time before she pushed things over the line. And sure enough, that Friday afternoon, she did. SUVs and campers lined the county road, blocking my driveway. HOA security volunteers in neon vests stood there like mall cops and actually told me, "Sorry, sir, the campground's full. You'll need to park elsewhere." I leaned out my window and said slow and clear, "Son, you're standing in my driveway." He blinked like he hadn't even thought of that. Behind him, kids tore down my "no trespassing" signs like they were souvenirs. Beer cans hit the dirt. Grills were dug straight into my grazing pasture. And, in the middle of it all, Karen with her megaphone, waving like a general in charge of a victorious army. I could have lost it right there. A lot of people would have. But I didn't. I pulled out my phone, recorded everything, and called the sheriff. When the deputy finally showed up, he looked over the chaos and shrugged, said it was a civil boundary dispute, and he couldn't do much without a court order. Karen strutted behind him, papers in hand, smirking like she'd won the lottery. The crowd cheered when the cruiser drove off. I stood there, fists clenched, watching smoke rise from my pasture like a battlefield, and for the first time in years, I felt small on my own land. I'll admit it, I went back inside, sat at my kitchen table, and thought about quitting. Thought maybe Karen was right. Maybe I was the stubborn fool holding back community progress. Maybe if I just let them have their fun, things would quiet down. That was the darkest moment, the point where the word selfish actually echoed in my head. But then I opened the old binder my father left me, survey maps, deeds, livestock statutes older than Karen's HOA itself, and the doubt burned away. My dad used to say, "Don't waste your breath fighting a fool on their terms. Let the land do the talking." That's when it hit me. If they wanted to treat my pasture like a playground, fine, but the land had rules. and I was about to remind them. That night I filed a formal notice with the sheriff's office and county, clear, legal, time, stamped. Saturday at high noon. I'd be moving bulls from the north pasture to the south. Routine ranch work. Perfectly lawful. I made copies. Taped one to the HOA office door, another to the hood of Karen's shiny Lexus. I even mailed one straight to the HOA board. Then I set up my trail cameras, documented the tents, the trash piles, the bonfires built in dry grass, the broken fence lines. Every clip went into a folder labeled HOA evidence. The next morning, I met my buddy Dale, a lawyer who owed me a favor. He whistled when he saw the photos. "Trespass, nuisance, environmental violations. You're covered 6 ways from Sunday," he said. I just nodded, because while Karen was busy playing ringleader with a megaphone, I was building a wall of receipts so high she couldn't climb over it. By noon Saturday, the campground was louder than ever. Kids screaming, generators rattling, beer flowing, Karen on stage yelling about taking back the commons. I walked up to the north gate with 2 wranglers I'd hired, Jake and Tom, both solid ranch boys who knew my bulls. Behind the fence stood 24 of the biggest, calmest, black-coated bulls you've ever seen, muscles rippling under the July sun. Karen spotted me and sneered into her megaphone. "Don't you dare!" I smiled and said back, "Oh, I dare." Then I unlatched the gate. The first snort echoed across the field like thunder. Dust rose under heavy hooves as the herd began to move, slow and steady, horns glinting. To me, it was just a pasture shift, controlled and deliberate. To the 500 trespassers clutching solo cups and selfie sticks, it looked like the cavalry of hell itself. Screams broke out. Tents collapsed as people tripped over each other. A golf cart crumpled like a soda can when one bull brushed against it, its alarm wailing like a dying siren. Phones shot into the air, live streams buzzing. Karen shrieked into her megaphone, "Stay calm! He's bluffing!" But no one believed her. Then the sheriff rolled up again. He stepped out, took one look at the bulls marching in formation and the panicked mob scattering, and said, "Well, I'll be. That's one way to clear trespassers." Karen ran to him, screaming, "Arrest him! He unleashed wild animals on families." The sheriff pulled the folded notice from his pocket, the one I filed yesterday. "Ma'am, these are livestock on his property, moved lawfully. The only trespassers here are you." Her face drained of color as the crowd streamed past her toward their SUVs. By the time the bulls reached the south gate, the campground was wrecked. Trash bags split open, coolers overturned, RVs peeling out and leaving ruts like scars across my pasture. Karen stood alone, her hat crooked, her clipboard bent. She shouted hoarsely, "This isn't over. I'll have his ranch condemned." The sheriff just crossed his arms. "Ma'am, looks to me like you endangered them. No permits, fire hazards, trespass. You're lucky nobody's hurt." She dropped the megaphone, her army gone. I locked the gate behind my bulls and let silence settle. But I knew better than to think Karen would quit. The next morning, I got served an injunction from the HOA, accusing me of endangerment, animal cruelty, psychological distress. I laughed, spilled coffee all over the papers, but the truth was, courts take that seriously. So I called Dale again. He grinned when he saw my evidence, trail cam footage of fence cutting, drone shots of trash heaps, county reports citing fire violations, environmental hazards, even a letter from animal control praising the bull's condition. "She's got theatrics," he said. You've got facts." And sure enough, county inspectors piled on. The fire marshal fined the HOA for illegal bonfires. The environmental officer gagged at the gray water dumped in my pasture. Public health issued fines for unpermitted food trucks. The HOA's insurance froze coverage. Every dime came straight out of homeowner dues. And neighbors started whispering, angry that Karen's circus was costing them their mortgage payments. When court day came, Karen strutted in with 3 lawyers, bright red blazer, lipstick like war paint. She smirked like victory was hers already. They painted me as a reckless cowboy, unleashing feral beasts. Then Dale stood up with my single binder. Maps, videos, reports, receipts. He laid them out one by one. No theatrics, just truth. And then he handed the judge the kicker. The tax lien receipts I'd quietly bought on HOA common parcels. Not only had Karen lied about my pasture being a greenbelt, but the HOA was sitting on land they barely controlled. The judge's gavel cracked like a rifle shot. He dismissed every one of Karen's claims, ordered the HOA to pay damages, legal fees, fines, repairs. He even acknowledged my leverage over parts of their common ground. Karen slumped in her chair, clipboard on the floor, neighbors glaring daggers at her. The mighty HOA president undone by her own arrogance. I walked out lighter than I'd felt in years, not because I'd crushed her, but because I'd done it the right way, patient, steady, deliberate. Just like my bulls, I didn't need to shout or swing fists. I let the land, the law, and the truth speak for me. And if there's one thing I learned from the whole mess, it's this: boundaries matter. And if you don't defend them, someone like Karen will.